In just a few hours, the trading day comes to a close with a milestone for Vietnam. And while all Asian markets gained this quarter, none rallied more than Vietnam, surging more than 60% in the 3 months. Bloomberg's Jason Folkmanis joins us for more from Ho Chi Minh City. Now, Jason, let's talk about Vietnam. It's one of Asia's youngest and also smallest stock markets. But tell us what is behind these eye-popping gains that we've seen.
Well, I think there's a few reasons. Briefly, I think, number one, of course, the Vietnamese economy is still growing, which is not the case for a lot of other economies worldwide and even regionally. So I think that's the one fundamental factor. Also, we're seeing people switch out of property investments because the property market has done relatively poorly here. So that's an interplay you see quite often in Vietnam, that when the property market goes down, the stock market could go up because people reapportion their investments. But I think probably most fundamentally is we're seeing the government loan subsidy program this year that's sparking a resurgence in credit growth. That program is not intended to be used for stock market investments, but Vietnam being Vietnam, undoubtedly some people are finding a way around those rules, and undoubtedly some of those loans are finding their way into the stock market.
Okay, Jason, let's talk about economic growth because Vietnam will report GDP numbers later on today. 3.9% is expected for the second quarter. And as you said, eco growth really factoring into the markets and the gains that we've seen.
Yeah, actually, that 3.9 figure will be for the first half. But yeah, I mean, that will be an acceleration from where they were in the first quarter. Again, 3.9 compared to what Vietnam has been doing. I mean, they've been averaging 7.5% growth over the last decade. So that's, it is down. But if you look around the region, obviously Thailand, Japan, a lot of other economies, Vietnam is doing considerably better. And certainly just on a sort of anecdotal day-to-day basis, on the streets in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, the streets are crowded, the restaurants are crowded. You don't get a sense of an economy in crisis at all here. Retail spending is holding up quite well. So I think the domestic economy is basically as healthy as could be expected considering the global economic situation.
Oh, that's a good comparison across the rest of Asia because that certainly is something interesting that's not happening elsewhere. But let's talk about the variable of the currency as well, the Vietnamese dong, because it fell to a record low this month. I mean, how is that being taken by the economy, and isn't it hurting exporters, or is it bad for inflation? Which one is it?
Well, the dong is, I mean, you've hit on a point that is definitely a risk point for this rally in the stock market because the currency is the one item that people tend to keep an eye on, and when people get nervous on the currency, it feeds through the economy. As you pointed out, it could definitely feed into inflation. And another thing that often happens when the currency here is weak is that people buy gold as a hedge against the dong. And if people switch into gold, often that's at the expense of stock market investment. So there's certainly a lot of nervousness about the currency. The state bank doesn't like to talk about it, but certainly the gap between the quote-unquote official rate and the black market or free market rate has widened. There's speculation that the central bank will devalue the dong again. They devalued it in December last year. This is definitely a red flag or something that the government has to keep a careful eye on. That's a potential risk for not just the stock market, but for the overall economy.
Okay, Jason, thank you for that update. Jason Folkmanis, a reporter in Ho Chi Minh City, and Vietnam is the best performer in the second quarter across the Asia